Look at all the teams that are currently dealing with COVID-19 issues in one form or another, whether it's facility closed, whether it's virtual meetings after practice, whether it's starting quarterback on the COVID-19 reserve list as the Detroit Lions are dealing with. They get him back Sunday morning. The only good news for the Lions are going against a collection of Vikings defensive backs that probably will have a hard time covering the Lions receivers, even if Matthew Stafford isn't fully prepared. Chris Jones on the COVID-19 reserve list for the Kansas City Chiefs, and that close to Sunday, he won't be available when the Panthers come to town. So it's amazing to see what's going on. By the way, you may have seen in the lower left-hand corner, Trent Brown, the Raiders tackle, back on the COVID-19 reserve list. He was on it. He was off it. They had the IV mishap in the locker room before the game in Cleveland on Sunday where he had air in his bloodstream, Peter. Potentially fatal condition, spent a day in the hospital while they conducted tests, flies back to Las Vegas. 2 days later, he's on the COVID-19 reserve list again. It's amazing to me to see what's going on here, and we wish him all the best. But look, this just tells me at some point there's going to be a critical mass here that the NFL is going to have to decide how to deal with. And we hear from time to time they should just press pause. The only problem is if you press pause, your players all scatter, right? Having a place to go every day, we heard this argument as it related to college football, and I didn't like that argument because it was all about making sure that the college football billion-dollar machine continues to kick out money for everyone but the players. But at the NFL level, I can get behind the idea that even if you stop playing games, you got to keep the guys in the routine of coming to work at a time when the virus is spreading like never before.
It's, pressing pause to me is impractical. It's just because to me, it's just going to exacerbate the problem. When you press pause, what do you do? Do you say, okay, no football this week, and everybody is going to have only virtual meetings? Do you think everybody is going to live only virtual lives? I don't think so. That's the issue. Unless you are in an NBA or NHL type bubble, and the NFL isn't and won't be until at least January in the postseason, unless you have a bubble, it's fruitless to press pause on the season. Mike, I want to bring up the Baltimore Ravens because I think the Ravens are in a really unique and sort of teetering on the edge position right now as it relates to COVID. Because as of today's practice with the Ravens, they will be without 5 starting defensive players in their back end, linebackers and secondary. 5 guys. And that includes Marlon Humphrey, who's obviously out for this game because he has tested positive for COVID. But imagine, Patrick Queen made so many big plays against the Steelers last week. Matthew Judon, who's their most dangerous edge player. Deshaun Elliott, who stepped in and done a wonderful job for Earl Thomas. And then, so you look at the guys who they're missing, and you say to yourself, okay, what's going on with them? What's going to happen with them? They cannot practice until Saturday. So just envision this. They're at home all week. They're staying at home. The only thing they do is they come in and they get their COVID test. They get back in their car and they drive away and they go home and participate in virtual meetings. Maybe they're doing something as far as to keep in shape and physically to be okay, assuming they're all feeling well and you haven't heard of any positive tests. So you assume that, it's just, in the proverbial abundance of caution that they are using now because they had close contact with Marlon Humphrey. But the only reason I bring a lot of this up is that, look, Sunday, I wouldn't call it a must-win, but it's damn close for the Baltimore Ravens. They are at Indianapolis coming off another bad, big game by Lamar Jackson, okay? And so on Sunday, they're playing a team in the Indianapolis Colts who've got their act together on offense. Phillip Rivers, 1 turnover in the last 2 weeks, 113 quarterback rating. He's seemingly on right now. You've got to play very well. And you've got basically now going up against the number 2 defense in football. And so you've got to lean on this offense to be the real big factor in this game, because you really don't have much of an idea. How is their defense going to play when they haven't been together the whole week, the entire week, Mike, not just a few days? They have not practiced once as a defense the entire week. And so you have to ask yourself the question, how much is COVID going to damage the Baltimore Ravens? This would have been a good week to have a gimme game. This is not a gimme game at Indianapolis on Sunday.
Yeah, but I still have faith in John Harbaugh and company to coach up the guys they have, to make sure their guys are ready. It isn't going to be easy. And look, 265 rushing yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers last week. I think the Ravens have plenty of reasons to feel good about their offense coming out of that game. I agree Lamar Jackson can't play like that on a regular basis. It's going to be impossible to win consistently if he does. But between J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Lamar Jackson cranking up the yardage they did, if they can do that again, it's not going to be any easier against the Colts defense than it was against the Steelers, but they still pulled it off. I've got faith in the Ravens, but it is a difficult situation, and it's one of these byproducts of one positive that you find out about after the player has been around the team. And for Marlon Humphrey, it was a full game around the team, locker room before the game, on the field in pregame warmups, on the sideline when the offense was playing, on the field with his teammates. And it's unfortunate, but as we said last segment, this is what the NFL is trying to do, to hold everything together and get the games played in a pandemic, and that's why the Ravens are in this situation. Let's move on to the Raiders, because the Raiders have gotten their punishment, multiple reports indicating that for the Trent Brown positive and everything that flowed from that, multiple players gone for several days, investigation into whether or not COVID-19 protocols were followed. The NFL and the NFLPA concluded they were not. A $500,000 fine imposed on the Raiders, $150,000 imposed on Coach John Gruden. That's on top of the $100,000 he was fined for blatantly failing to wear a mask on the sidelines in week 2 after he failed to properly wear one in week 1. And then on top of it, and this is the thing that gets a team's attention, they took away one of the unscratched lottery tickets from the Hall of Draft picks that the Raiders have in 2021, a 6th-round pick gone. This is an acceleration of past penalties imposed on the Raiders. If they continue these issues, the penalties will increase. The Titans only got a $350,000 fine for their issues from earlier in the season. The Raiders got whacked, though, because they're not first-time offenders. I still think it's hilarious when I think of John Gruden saying a few weeks ago, we're on the cutting edge of beating the virus. Peter, I'd hate to see where they'd be right now if they weren't, in Gruden's estimation, on the cutting edge of beating it, because the league and the virus have been beating the Raiders.
11 days ago, John Gruden said, and I quote, "We've done everything we can to follow protocol." I mean, that's a ridiculous statement. It just is. You know, Trent Brown didn't wear his tracking device to a practice. How possibly can you say you've done everything you can, to stop the virus? It's so, look, the Raiders right now are learning a very hard lesson. It is the same lesson, not in anywhere near as big a way, but the Raiders are learning the lesson that the New Orleans Saints learned in Bountygate. And that is, if you are in charge of this team, we're holding you responsible. So Sean Payton, maybe you didn't know about what was going on in Greg Williams' defensive team meetings. Mickey Loomis, maybe you didn't know what was going on in Greg Williams' defensive team meetings. But you know what? You're in charge of this franchise. So Sean Payton, you're whacked for a year. Mickey Loomis, you're whacked for 8 games. And so that is what's going on right now with John Gruden. He's in charge, and he has to do a better job of doing everything he can. You got to do everything you can and really do everything you can to follow protocol.
Yeah, and look, I don't understand it, because if you want to be the best team you can be, we alluded to this last segment, The Steelers are not going to have these issues. And if they do, they're going to have to answer to an angry Mike Tomlin, or as the case may be, angrier than he usually is. That demeanor has been successful in getting guys to do the things they are supposed to do. He controlled Antonio Brown for nearly a decade, for crying out loud. We have learned how difficult of an assignment that can be as he bounced around other teams last year. So I don't understand why every NFL coach didn't just accept. They had 5 months to come to terms with this. It's real. It's not fake. It's not a hoax. It's not something that's going away the day after the election. This is something that you have to keep out of your facility. And if you fail to keep it out of your facility, and if you fail to keep anyone who has it from spreading it to other players, you will have competitive consequences by way of having key players not available or not prepared to play. And you will have punitive measures imposed upon you by the league. And it's astounding to me that a guy like John Gruden, who seems to be smart enough, Peter, to understand this. This is not some complicated high-level math. This is very linear. Follow the rules. Keep your guys from doing things they shouldn't do. Keep your guys from going to an indoor event with no one wearing masks, with way too many people in the room. I mean, when I saw that, I said to myself, and I probably said it out loud on this program, what the hell is John Gruden doing in all of this? Because if Gruden is controlling the locker room the way he should, this never happens. And it's the ultimate pass-fail. Either you're getting your guys to do the things they should do and not do the things they shouldn't do, or you're not. And look at what's happened with the Raiders. I don't know what their record would be if they hadn't had these issues. They still may have lost to the Buccaneers. But this is an example of what happens when the coach chooses. Because I can't imagine he's incapable of doing this. I think this is what happens when the coach chooses not to say the things, not to hold the guys accountable, not to do the things necessary to ensure that there's full compliance and, in turn, no consequences for failure to comply.
Yeah, I think after they had and were sanctioned lightly for the charity event in which they were all on stage without masks on in Las Vegas, I think after that should have been the moment where Gruden stood in front of his team and said, "Listen, there's zero excuses from now on to not know the rules, and we're not gonna take it anymore. And even though we're paying Trent Brown $1 jillion this year, whatever his salary is, it's huge. Whatever his cap number is, they have to be willing. John Gruden has to be willing to stand up in front of his team and says, anybody violates these protocols, we're going to go after you in a disciplinary way, and we'll limit your playing time." You know, he's got to do something because what he's done, at least up to this point, has not worked.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.